Ms. Paris grew up in the Greenville community. She graduated from Parker High School, and many people may not realize just how much she gave back to Greenville, being her home city. If you ask most folks that graduated from Parker High School in the 50s and 60s, they remember that band program that was at Parker during those years. A lot of people don't realize that the band director at that time was a former student of Ms. Paris. So she gave back to the Greenville community. She loved her community. We all remember her sweatshirt that said she was from the old school. So she grew up with the Parker values, brought those to Newberry, and then turned around and gave back to the state and Greenville community as well.
One good thing I remember was that early on, when I was a kid, I asked her, I said, why don't we call you Aunt Lorraine? We just call you Lorraine. And she says, well, aunts are old people, and I'm not old. And she really stayed just young at heart her entire life.
She became band director in Newberry in the late 40s, and she was a pioneer at that time because there weren't many female band directors in the state of South Carolina. First of all, she left a legacy that I don't know that anyone could duplicate. She loved her students, and she was a combination of a disciplinarian, a person who held her students accountable, but she taught with the heart of a teacher.
They always had fundraiser, being in the band always had fundraisers. But when they moved into the new high school, they needed to build a new barbecue pit. So if a student would mess up or something during practice, she'd always tell them to take a brick from the pile and take it across the field. So eventually she got the whole pile down there, one at a time.
I think it was always astonishing to me to realize that Ms. Paris actually taught 3 generations of families in the Newberry community.
She pulled a young lady into her office, and I knew that I was getting ready to observe an incredible life lesson. She pulled this young lady into the office, and she looked at her and she said, told her some things about what she was doing, and then she looked at her and she said, I taught your mom, and I know that your mom would not approve of this behavior. And it was at that moment that I realized her significance in the community and how and then about halfway through the next sentence, she stopped and she said, matter of fact, I taught your grandmother. And she said, I know that your grandmother would not approve of what you're doing.
After she passed away, and especially at the funeral, we heard a number of stories. People would come up to us at the visitation, and this former student came up to us. He was in scrubs. He had just come from the hospital. He was a nurse. He told us that when he was in the band, he was having a hard time, and he told my aunt that he was going to drop out of the band. The next day, she showed up at his house, and she and his mother talked him into staying in the band and in school, and he told us that he wouldn't be here where he was without her. She always rented an apartment. She never owned a house until the 90s. And she always lived in Newberry, and she finally bought a house, and the house she bought was the one that the Newberry High School Career Center, their students built. They'd have a project every year where they'd build the house and then sell it. So that's what she bought. Moved it on as a little plot of land that she had there in town.
There's success, and there's being successful, and there's significance and being significant. And you can be successful without being significant, but if you're significant with your students, that's how you leave a legacy. And I think there's no one who left a bigger legacy than Lorraine Paris.